welcome to Wednesday's edition of Cracking the Cryptic and the Tomb of Whispers, which is the name of this puzzle, which is a collaboration between some of the great setters on the world Sudoku scene. Nishant Agarwal, Bataku, Glipperal and Tob Snibob have put their minds together to create this. Well, it's a puzzle based around the German Whispers rule, which is a very interesting one. I don't get to do German Whispers very often, but when I do, I always find them, well, interesting is the right word. Perplexing is another word that could come to mind and be appropriate. Anyway, I'll read you the rules of this one in just a moment. It's a big day for the channel today, though. Probably for the last, well, ever since we've started the channel and started, having people be able to play the puzzles, you guys have asked us, is there any way you can put your puzzles in our software? Well, today is the day when you can do that, believe it or not. So our programmer Sven has been working very hard on something called Sudoku Pad, which is an app which is now out. Well, at least it should be out. We have asked Apple and Android to release it. You can see it on the screen now. I think that's Jovial's first puzzle from the Sudoku Extravaganza being input into the Sudoku Pad, and then you can obviously play it on the pad once you've put it into the software, which is, well, we hope it's going to be incredibly popular with you guys. I think it costs a couple of bucks on the various platforms, and yeah, we hope you enjoy it. And if you don't even want to buy it for the ability to put the puzzles into the software, then you can buy it because it comes with 12 classic Sudokus that we've created. So we hope that you enjoy those too. So let us know. This is, I say, something that we've been working on periodically for years, and today is the day it's finally come to fruition. We're delighted about that. And we're anxious to get the feedback, so check it out. Anything else to mention? Well, just I think we've had now 750, I feel like Steve McQueen in The Great Escape there, 750 correct solutions to Jovial Sudoku Extravaganza over on Patreon. 20 puzzles, all featuring a different Sudoku variant, all approachable, and many of you, well, 750 of you have actually now sent us the correct solution. I nearly said the answer there. I'm not going to say the answer. 750 of you have sent us the correct solution, which you receive once you finish puzzle 20. If you're a patron of the channel and you haven't tried it, please have a go. We know from all of the feedback that you will enjoy it. And the other thing we've had, I think, is over 300 correct solutions to the murder mystery Sudoku hunt, and the feedback on that has also been terrific. So yeah, there's an awful lot of stuff going around the channel at the moment, which seems to be giving people a lot of pleasure, which is what we aim to do. Now, what are the rules of Tomb of Whispers? Let me read them to you. Normal Sudoku rules apply. In cages, digits must sum to the small clue in the top left corner of the cage, and digits cannot repeat within a cage. So normal killer Sudoku rules, that means you've got to make those 5 squares there add up to 19 without repeating a digit. Adjacent digits on an orange line have a difference of at least 5. So this is the German Whispers piece, which basically means that all of these lines behave like demented sine waves. They sort of oscillate. You never know whether they oscillate from high, well, you do know hopefully at some point, but you don't know at the start whether they oscillate high then low, because it could go high, low, high, low, high, low, high. And when I say high, I mean, a highish digit. If that's an 8, whoopsie, if that's an 8, this square has to be 5 different from 8 at least. So it could be a 3, or it could be a 2, or it could be a 1. Let's make it a 2. Now this square obviously has to now be a high digit. It's got to be at least 5 different from 2. So that could now be 7 or 9 because it can't be 8. So yeah, think about demented sine waves when you're solving this, and you'll be good to go. Anything else to mention? I don't think so. The way to play is to click the link under the video as usual. Now I get to play. Let's get cracking. Now, apart from the demented sine wave thought, the other thing to know about German Whispers puzzles, which looks like it might be relevant in row 2 perhaps, maybe other places as well, but I'm not seeing anything else immediately, is to think about a digit that can never go. on a German Whispers line, and that is the digit 5. If you ever try and put a 5 on a German Whispers line, you will quickly run into a problem with the next digit on the line, because it's got to be at least 5 different from 5. Well, it's either therefore got to be 0 or a negative number, which aren't allowed, or it's got to be 10 or higher, which also aren't allowed. So that you can never put a 5 on an orange line, and therefore in row 2 I'm seeing that the 5 is in one of 2 places. Now, if the 5 is in the 19 cage, do we have a problem? The answer is yes, because this is a German Whispers line of size 4. So we have to think about parity along the line. Once we know it's of size 4, we know that there are going to be 2 highish digits on that line and 2 lowish digits on the line. Well, remember, the highish digits, the minimum they could be would then be 6 and 7. And the minimum the low digits could be would be 1 and 2. Now 6 plus 7 plus 1 plus 2 is, I think, 16, which means there's simply no way this square could be a 5, because then the minimum for the cage would be 21, and that's too high. So the 5 goes in this square. And that makes me look at the middle square, because what I can't do is put the 5 on the German Whispers line in the middle square. That means the 5 is locked into 2 positions in box 5. And that... is that giving me an X-swing on 5s? Maybe, or maybe not. I'm not sure, but there's definitely a restriction now on 5s in this column. I mean, just by Sudoku and using the fact you can't put a 5 on a German Whispers line, the 5s can only go in those 3 squares in column 2, and in these 3 squares in column 8. Now, can that be a 5 in the 21 cage? Those are a minimum of 16. Maybe it can then. You can't put 5 in that one, because that's in a 20 cage. We know that the orange line has a minimum of 16 on it again, so that would make the minimum of the cage 21. That is not a 5. So the 5 is in one of those 2 positions in column 8. If I could get rid of this one, we would have an X-swing on 5s. I can't immediately see how to do that. So what am I meant to be doing here? Is it something to do with... I'm just noticing that these cages are all sort of... they're like an expanded version of a Fistemafell ring. I probably don't want to think about this, but I'm just going to check whether we've got anything set related going on. Let me just have a quick look. So these 2 strips would be 2 sets of the digits 1 to 9. Now if I make those blue strips are also 2 sets of the digits 1 to 9, because that's 2 complete columns. Remove the common digits. Let's have a look. So we can remove those squares which appear in both sets, and we now have equivalence between the purple and the blue. And this is absolute nonsense, isn't it? Sorry. I just thought because this looked like it was sticking to particular columns and particular rows that this might be interesting, but I don't actually think that's... well, if it is something, it's not something that's obvious to me. Right, sorry. No, where's my colouring gone? I've lost my X-wing. What was it? Was that one, that one, that one? They could be 5s in column 2, and those could be 5s, I think, in column 8. Right, there we go. And we've explored one red herring. Let's not find too many more of those. Where should we look now? We shall... we know... okay, well, we know each orange line contains a minimum of 16 on its German Whispers line. And that means that the squares, the empty squares in these cages, are restricted a little bit. So that one can only be 1, 2, or 3. That one can only be 1, 2, 3, or 4. That one can be that one can be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and that one can be 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. They're both 21 cages. So does that tell me anything new? So this one has a minimum of 16. It could be higher than that, couldn't it? So this could be... Oh, no. Hang on. The only way that's adding up to 16 is if it uses the 1 and the 2. So that would make this have to be a 3. Oh, this is clever. Right. I see what's happening here. Okay, let's have a think about this. So, we know that the only way to make this German Whispers line add up to 16 is like that. Now, I'm just trying to think to myself, does that mean 16? This is really clever, and it's a bit devious, actually. It is a bit devious. So the first thing I did there was to wonder whether I could replace a high digit, one of the high digits, and you can't take out a 7 and replace it with an 8 for obvious reasons. You've still got to put 3 in here, and now this is adding up to 17, and the whole cage adds up to 20. So that's absolute bobbins. That will not work. So you've got to keep the high digits as 6 and 7 in order to make this cage have any chance of working. But what you can't do is substitute the 3 out of here and put it on the German Whispers line. And why can't you do that? Well, it's because the moment you put a 3 on a German Whispers line, you can the digit that is next to the 3, look, if we try and put a 3 anywhere along this line, let's put it here. That's the best we'll do, actually. If we put it in the middle, it'll be worse than this. But if we put it here, this square now has to be at least equal to 8. So I lose any degrees of freedom I might have had by putting the 3 here and thinking this can be a 1 or a 2. The problem is that now the minimum I could make this add up to would be an 8 here, and these two squares would then have the ability to be 1 and 6. And I'm presuming that that's going to, once this is a 2, that's going to add up to too many. But let's actually prove it to ourselves. So that would have to go 6, 1 like this. That's 15, 18, and this has to be a 2, and that's too many. That's 20. So once you have to put a 3 on the line, because you have to put an 8 with it, you lose the ability to keep this down to a minimum. That's really clever, actually. That is really clever. So what's this telling us? It means we can't do anything other than put 1, 2, 6, 7 on the line and 3 here in order to make the 19 cage work. And I'm not sure we can't do more here, because what I was just thinking about there as I was putting the 3 here and noting that that would be the best place to put the 3. And that's because, of course, if you put a mediocre number in the middle of a German Whispers line, you affect both the cells on its sides. So one thing you can never do with a German Whispers line is put a 6 in the middle of it. Well, not in this instance anyway, because those two squares would now both have to be 5 different from 6, so they both have to be 1, and that won't work. So you can't put 6 in the middle of a German Whispers line. And that means the 6 is in one of those two squares, which means it must be next to a 1. So wherever the 6 goes, it needs the 1 next to it. So the 1 is in one of those two places, and therefore is not in the extreme positions. Yes, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. Now can you put a 2 in the middle of the German Whispers line? No, you can't, because if you do, what are you going to put in these two squares? You can no longer put 6, but you have to put 2 high digits, so they'd have to be at least 7 and 8, and that breaks the total again. So you just can't put 2 in the middle of the line. So actually, this is incredibly clever. How on earth somebody, one of these geniuses has worked out that a 19 cage with a 4-cell German Whispers line in this sort of geometry actually has a very, very restricted way of being constructed. And that is not something I would think about in normal life very often. Now, look, I can't put 1 in here anymore. So does that mean do I need a 1 in the 20 cage? If there's no 1 on a German Whispers line, then yeah, okay. This absolutely breaks it in half, because if there's no 1 on a German Whispers line, the minimum low digits on a 4-cell German Whispers line are 2 and 3. Now, once you put a 2 and a 3 on a German Whispers line, the minimum high digits, the 3 has to be next to a digit that's at least 5 different from it. So the minimum that could be would be an 8. The minimum that could go with the 2 would be a 7. And the German Whispers line then would add up to 20. It would be 2, 3, 7 and 8 as a minimum. And that would mean this is a 0, which is not possible. So there is a 1 in this 20 cage, and it's not there. So it's here. It's in one of those 2 squares. And I have a feeling this might go round the grid, because it's just, in fact, it is going to go round the grid in the most beautiful way, because getting rid of the 1 from this square in the 21 cage means that this cannot be 1-less. If it's 1-less, we know it adds up to 20 as a minimum. Now this can't be a 1, the 21 cage can't work. So there is a 1 in the 21 cage, and it must be vertical, which means this square is not a 1. That logic continues, and this is going to give us this digit. That is absolutely gorgeous. You go round in a circle, penciling 1s in the cages, and that seems to give us a 7 here. That means this is a 1. We know the 1 has got to be next to the 6, so that fixes that. That's a 2. Good grief. And now I'm wondering, does the 20 cage need to have a 6 in it or not? Yes, it does. Yes, of course it does. If the 20 cage doesn't have a 6 in it, then the minimum we've got as the high digits on the German Whispers line is 7 and 8, which is 15, and that would mean the other 3 squares would have to add up to 5. And you can't make 3 squares with different digits add up to 5, because 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. So there is a 6 in the 20 cage, and it's got to be in the same positions that the 1's in. So this is a 1-6 pair. Now, does there have to be a 6 in the 21 cage? That doesn't seem quite as obvious to me, because I could very simply go 7, 8, 1, 2 or 3, although, yeah, and I could go 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, couldn't I? There's nothing preventing, there's nothing preventing 7, this having 1, 2, 7, 8 on the German Whispers line. Okay, that's probably not what we're meant to think about then. So let's think back about the 20 cage. What do we know about this? It's got 1, 6 here. And we know we don't put the 6 in the middle of the German Whispers line, because then it would have to be surrounded by 1s. So that's a 1, that's a 6. Now we know the parity, and this is so often important in these puzzles. Now we know how the sine wave works. This time it's going, and that means that this square is high, and it's not 7. So it's 8. It's 8 because it can't be 9. If it's 9, that's 15. These 3 squares have to add up to 5 again. It can't be. So that's 8. This is a 2, 3 pair to make the cage add up. Whoopsie, that's a 2, 3 pair, and this is so clever, it's ridiculous. So now we've got 4, 5s and 9s here. That's not 5 because of the 5 pencil marks. Okay. So now we don't know the parity of this line. We know that this is a high and a low digit in some order. We know the high digit is a 7 or a 9 because it's not a 6 or an 8. But that doesn't prevent this from having a 6 in it. Okay, hang on a second, let me think about this. So, do we know the parity of this German Whispers line then? It's going to be it's going to be very hard, isn't it, to have... If this has 2 low digits in those positions, because remember the parity is either going doot doot, or it's going doot doot for the low digits. Now if those two are both low, they are a 1-4 pair, which means 9 would be appearing on the German whispers line, because once you put a 4 on, you must put a 9 on. 13, 14. Oh, okay. It does break that way, but the simpler way of breaking it when thinking about whether this can be a 1-4 pair is noting where the 4 would go. Because there's a 1 in one of those two squares, this would be the 4, and it's in the middle of a German whispers line, so it would have to have 9 on both sides of it. That does not work at all. And this is gorgeous. This is so clever, because now we know the parity of this line. We know those are not the low digits, so the low digits are those two. These are high digits, and 1 is not a high digit. So the 1 goes here. These, maybe I should shade these actually. I think I will do that. I'm going to make those purple. Purple is going to mean a high digit. And that means this is a low digit, so that's 2, 3 or 4. You can't put 5 on the line. Now, do these have to have a 6 in? That would be very useful, because you couldn't put the 6 here. If there's no 6, this isn't. Yes, of course. If you don't put 6 on this German whispers line, these two would have to be an 8-9 pair, because there's no possibility of using 7. And an 8-9 pair is 17, and we couldn't make the other 3 squares add up to 4. So there is a 6, and you can't put 6 in the middle of the line because it needs to be surrounded by 1s if you do that. So this square is just a 6 out of nowhere. This square is an 8 or a 9. So we've got these 3 squares having to add up to 14. So if this is a 9, these have to add up to 5. Okay. So you can never put 5 here, because if this is an 8, these have to add up to 6, and there's nothing to pair the 5 with. So if they're adding up to 5, the 5 it's obviously broken. If they're adding up to 6, it's still broken. That is not a 5. There is a 2 in one of those squares, because it's either a 2-3 pair or a 2-4 pair, depending on what this is. And these squares are now restricted to being 4s, 8s and 9s in row 2. And that's interesting again, because this square is definitely not a 4, which means one of these 2 squares is a 4 and it's on a German whispers line. So one of these 2 squares is a 9. Which means 9 is in one of those 3 squares in box 2. Because whichever one of these is a 9, it's ruling a 9 out of those 3 cells. Which means that square is not a 9. Which means that... I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means. So, what do we do now? Can we do a similar trick here then with these squares? So those are 2 low digits. If these are both low digits as well, they would either be, well, we know one of them is a 1 for sure, because there's definitely a 1 in the cage. So if these were low, this would be a 1, and this would be, it couldn't be a 2, it would be a 3 or a 4. And well, you can't put a 4 in the middle of the German whispers line, and you also can't put a 3 in the middle of this German whispers line, because those squares would then have to be an 8-9 pair, because they have to be 5 different from 3. And that means that's 17, and we can't make the other squares add up to 4 again. It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. So we know the parity of this German whispers line. It must be high digits here, which means we know the position of the 1, which means we know there's a 1 in one of those 3 squares, We know this square is now a 2, 3 or a 4 because it's got to be low. We know that square is a 7 or a 9 because it's not a 6 or an 8. Now, do we know more than that? I'd love to know if this is 6 or not. It feels like it probably is, but I don't know how we prove that. If it's not 6, if it was 7, that would be 7. No, it's not 7 actually. I can see why it's not 7, because that would make this a 9. And those two squares would be 16, and these three squares can't add up to 5. So it's not 7, this is 6, 8 or 9. If it's 9, we have exactly the same problem. So this is a 6 or an 8. So if this is 8, the only way it works is with 8 and 7. Which actually might work, mightn't it? Then those would be a 2, 3 pair. Gah! How do we do this then? If that's an 8, that would be a 9, that would be a 7. Bother and bobbins. Oh dear, I'm stuck. Right, okay. We're going to have to think again. What more can we do here? Do we know... Can we even eliminate anything from this cell? Is it possible that that's a 5? If we go 6, 7 and 1, that's 14. Yeah, no, that's fine. 5 and 2 would work. Oh, okay, I'm really stuck. I don't know what to do. Okay, let's think about something different. Where else can we look in the puzzle? We can look at... I have not got a clue where to look. Anyone got any ideas they could tell me about? We could... Can I limit this one anymore? What have I got so far in this one? I've got 7. And then I know I've got a high digit here. If that's 4, that's 9. Oh, that doesn't work. Okay, I can get rid of 4 from that square. 4 plus 9 is 13. Plus another 7 is 20, and that square can't be a 1 because of this one, so that square can't be a 4. You sort of lose 2 degrees of freedom by pushing this up so high, because it pushes this up so high as well. So that's a 2 or a 3. Which I don't think is doing an... oh, no. 2, 2, 2 up there wouldn't break it either. Ah, okay. 8 here. No, that can go with a 2 or a 3. Stuck. Let's check out these German whispers lines then, and just check what these squares can be. So if that's if that's 4, we know that's 9. So 9 is one possibility. If this is 8, this is low and it's not 1. So this is 2, 3 or 4. And it's not 4 because you can't put 4 in the middle of the line. So this is 2, 3 or 9. If that's 2, 3 or 9 as well, we have a triple there. Hang on, let's just check this square. If this... Oh, this square's better. It's better because it sees 1 and 2 as its load. Yeah, so if this is 4, this is 9, because it has to be 5 different. If this is 8 or 9, this is low, and it's not 1 or 2. And it's not 4 because you can't put 4 in the middle of a German whispers line. That's from 3 or 9. So there is a 2, 3, 9 triple in row 3. Ah, beautiful. Now, look at row 3, and our square 5 and 6 go in row 3. And the answer is not in those squares. So there is a 5, 6 pair in row 3. That's probably been available for a while, actually, if I'd focused on it. I didn't even think to look at it. But you obviously can't put 5 in those squares. And 6 is also impossible because you couldn't have put 1 in those squares on the German whispers line. So these 3 squares then are, well, no, I was about to say 1. They're not 1. They're 4, 7 and 8. Oh, this is gorgeous. Right, okay. What's this square? Oh, this is going to determine the parity of the line as well, because this square can't be a 4. If that's a 4, it's double 9. It's not a 4. so it's high. If it's high, these two squares are low, so this is a high digit. These are low digits. I haven't actually got a colour for low digits. Those are high digits. Right. Okay, this is important. I think we're going to have to go to low-high colouring, I think, because look, those four squares are all low on the German whispers line. And if they're low, they've got to be 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that's creating a quadruple in box 5. That is beautiful. So knowing the parity of this, in fact, whichever way round this, I hadn't appreciated this at all. This line is incredibly clever. Whichever way round this had been, whether this was high or low, we would have got a quadruple on the other parity in box 5. Whoa, okay. And now this square, whatever that square is, has to live in one of those squares, which means that these squares can only be selected from 5, 7, and 8, because we've worked out at some point there's a 5 in one of these. Now we know there's a 7 or an 8 in one of them. Oh. No, better than that. Right, okay. I'm going to change my colouring now. I'm going to allow 5 to be a high digit, and let me show you why. If I allow 5 to be high, then all of those squares become high. And now I've got a quintuple there and a quintuple there, which looks like it is going to do work. It's going to do work there. Let me just complete that then, because that seems like quite a sensible idea. So anything that is 5 or higher, I'm going to shade purple. No, I'm not, because I know people don't like that. I'm going to shade it orange. I think orange and blue are quite good for colourblind people, so I'll use that instead. Oh, now that square doesn't seem to be a 5 anymore. So that means my green cells are an X-wing on 5s. Which actually... is that useful or not? I'm not sure. Anyway, let's have a think about... well, yes, we've spotted this digit, haven't we? We've now got a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 quintuple in row 5, because we've worked out these are all high digits, and therefore this square is definitely not another high digit. So that's a 4. That's a 5. Oh, this is good. I can get rid of my green colouring. That's a 9. And now look, we know that there's an X-wing on 5, so that's the other 5 that we've got to place. Get rid of the green colouring. And now we're just left with... we're left with the ability to just do oranges and blues to complete the colouring of the puzzle. So let's colour all of these in blue. That's definitely orange. That's definitely orange. These are all blues in row 5. These are all blues. These are all blues in column 5, and that's therefore not a 9. This square's got to be a 1, 2, or a 3, because it can't be a 4. These squares are the same. They've got to be 1, 2, or 3. That's not all. Oh, whoa. Yeah, look, this little square, I'd not figured that one out. That's also blue, and that's also orange. But the blues here are a 2, 3 pair, so this square's a 4. Oh, but it's not on the German whispers line, so I can't do anything with it. Oh, 4s are not in these squares. Does that affect anything in this box? There's 2 things. I'm seeing all sorts of things here, sorry. I've got a 4 in one of these squares. Now, whichever one of these is 4... it's on a German whispers line, so there must be a 9 in one of those 2 positions. That means in box 5 there's a 9 in one of those 2 positions, which means in box 8 there's a 9 in one of those 2 positions. Oh no, and it nearly works, and we get a 9 into one of 2 places in box 7. Okay, that's one thing. Now there was something else I noticed. This 2, 3, yeah, I was going to add up this. Now this is 6, 4 and 1, which is 11. Those 2 squares have to add up to 10 to make 21. So this is an 8, 2 pair. And that's going to fix that one. And it also is going to give us some digits along there. Look, so there's now a 4-9 pair here. These squares are not 3. And I've got a 1-2 pair in that row. Okay, maybe this doesn't do very much. That's no longer a 2. And this 8 means that square's a 6. Ah, that might help. Or not. No, that 6 is the most useless thing it could have been, actually. Because if it had been the 8, we would have known this couldn't be a 9. But this being a 6, I don't think puts enough pressure on this digit, which is a shame. So in this column, we know that square's a 7 or a 9. Oh, it's not a 9 apparently according to these pencil marks, so that's a 7. Oh, that's great. So now if we know that's a 9, we're going to be able to work out these two squares have to be a 2-3 pair. But we don't know what this is. It could be either, I think. The 7 here means... don't know what that means. These squares are all 1s, 2s, 3s, or 4s. Now we can't put 1s into those ones. We've got a 2-3 pair here, so that's a 4. That means that's not a 4. That one's not a 3 either because of this. And I've now got a 2-3 pair here. I suppose I should, if I colour them in, I might find it easier to spot them. Now this square's a 1, which means that square's a 2. And this seems to be unravelling some of the puzzle, which is exactly what we're hoping for. Now hang on, I've got a 4, 7, 8 triple here, so that means those two squares are a 1, 9 pair. Which means there's got to be a 9 in this domino. Is that surprising? Well, either that's an... oh, no, it's not. That's completely obvious. So actually, that's the same on both sides. Because either this is a 4, in which case, because of German whispers, this is a 9, or this is a 9, and therefore there's obviously a 9 in the domino. So there is, in both cases, we've got a 9 looking down the grid, which means that 9 is in one of these 3 squares. My tummy is rumbling. I'm obviously hungry. 6. There are 4 6s looking at the middle box. That's a 6. Oh, and these squares, look, a 7, 8, and 9 in the middle box. So there's definitely a 9 in one of these. Yeah, okay, and it's quite interesting. I don't know if this matters, but these two squares here, whatever's in those two squares, have to appear in this quintuple of high digits. So those two squares have to appear in those two squares. So those are 7, 8, and 9 as well, which I think actually was probably pretty obvious. I just didn't think to notate it. Okay. 5 here gives that square's a 6 just by Sudoku elimination. So that square's a 5. 5, 5. Oh, where does 5 go in box 4? It's not going to go on the German whispers line, so that's got to be a 5. Where does 5 go in box 6? It can't be in the German whispers line, so that's got to be a 5. Oh, okay. So then we get left with, maybe I should have looked at this earlier as well. We've got 5s and 7. Yeah, okay. Where does 5 go in row 8? It's got to go here, which means that square's got to be a 7. One of these 3 squares has got to be a 7. I don't know if we know which one yet. We've got an... have we done this 2? Oh yeah, we can do the 2-3 pair by virtue of just Sudoku. 3 is not in those squares. 3 is not in this square. Oh, in the middle box, where do you put the 3? It's got to go here, and that's going to be profoundly important for the German whispers line. Because of the mad oscillation, we can't now put 7 in here. It would be within 4 of a 3, which is not going to work. So that's an 8. This square's now got to be at least 8, so it's not 7. which may or may not be important. I'm not quite sure. I'm going to get rid of the 9s in the corner there. I am going to notice that those squares are now a 7-9 pair, which means these squares are a 5-8 pair, which means this square is a 9, which means this square is a 7. Which doesn't seem to tell me quite enough about the state of the world, but yeah, okay. The 7 can't be next to a 4 on a German whispers line, so it does tell me something, because now I've got a 1-2 pair in box 5 and this square's become a 4, which is not surprising because the 4 has to deal with the 9 here somehow. Now I've got a 4-7 pair resolved up there. I've got a 7 locked into one of these squares. The 7, do we know the order of the 1 and the 2? Maybe, maybe not, I'm not sure. 1s and 9s up here. Oh, they're resolved by the 1-2 pair, look. So I've got a 1 and a 9, and a 9 here. Now this column must be restricted. Can this really be 5 or... Ah, the 1 has to go there by Sudoku. So that's a 1, that's a 7. No, that's absolute nonsense. I'm seeing I've got far too many 1s down here. What I should have done is eliminate those 1s as pencil marks once I put this 1 in the grid. That would have made more sense. But where does 5 go in this column? Yeah, I can see that. That's a 5, that's an 8. Therefore, this must be an 8, and now I haven't broken box 8, which is better. Now, this is a 5-7 pair, which I can do. 7 goes here by Sudoku. The squares left in here need to be 3, 4, and 6. 6 must go in the corner. 3 must go here. 4 must go here. This needs 8 and 9, which I can do. 9 and 7 go in the grid. These 3 squares are now 1s, 2s, and 8s. Now I wonder about this one. Can that really be 1, 2, or 8? If this is high, it can be... Oh, it can, that can be 1, 2, or 8. Bobbins. This is 3, 4. It's 3 or 4. It can't be 9. Feels like we're making quite good progress. Those 2 squares are a 2, 4 pair. Those 2 squares are a 6, 8 pair. 7 can't go there anymore, so we can place 7 in box 4. These squares have got to be 1s, 2s, and 8s. It's the same as those, look. Oh, okay. Oh, so I've got very similar symmetry in those positions. Ooh. Oh, I see. Right, okay. Look at this one. This is quite interesting. It's very clever again, not surprising. But if this is 4, this square is a low digit that's a 1 or a 2. So we've got a 4 here. In fact, let's do it longhand. If that's a 4, this is a 9. This square is now a 1 or a 2. This square is a 1 or a 2. Now what are we going to put in that square? We get too many digits in column 1 that have to be selected from just 1, 2, and 4. And that won't work. So that means we actually, even though these are so similar, the way the bottom of the grid unwinds is different, and that allows us to disambiguate this. This is not 4, that's 9, that's 4, that's 9, that's 3, that's 8. Therefore, this is not 8, this is not 8. This 8 is giving us an 8 here and an 8 and a 6. 6 goes here. What goes here? 4. That gets us the 3 up there. Oh, I see. And now the 4 and the 2 get unwound. The 2 and the 1, the 2 and the 1, the 1 and the 2 and the 8. And that looks actually, that does look correct. I realise I've not finished off all my highlighting. I hope you'll forgive me for that. Do you want me to do it? No, what I'll do is this. I'll get rid of all the highlighting. There we are. No one can complain now. That is a beautiful puzzle. There is some really clever stuff in there. I feel like I may have missed a trick by not spotting the importance of this long German whispers line, in particular the effect of this square. This is a beautiful square, and I just didn't understand it. But whatever goes in this square it's sort of determined. You can use it to realise that these 4 squares have to either be a 1, 2, 3, 4 quadruple or a 6, 7, 8, 9 quadruple, and that's really lovely. But I only figured that out once I got this down to a few of the options. But the other lovely thing is thinking about how these cages interact with their 4-cell German whispers lines, which was really, really beautiful. The fact that you can lock a 1 onto all of them and actually work out exactly the contents and the positions of the 1, 2, 3, 6, 7 in the 19 cage is just gorgeous. It really is. Whole thing is stunning. It just shows you sometimes great minds, when you put them together, they create masterpieces. Tomb of Whispers, and all 4 of you should take a bow. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll be back later with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.